On the wall in my office hangs a painting that might seem odd to many. It depicts the construction of the Tower of Babel. Now, by all accounts, this might seem to be a really strange piece of artwork that anyone would want to have on display. We all know the story. The tower has been constructed as an arrogant statement of human greatness. The sheer audacity of this construction project cannot be overstated. Crews were working hard just to prove they could reach the heavens to make a name famous for themselves. And yet what I find most compelling about this piece is just that, humankind's ability to unite together to build something of scale and magnitude. But just as incredible is our willingness to take on such a project without giving God much thought in the process. Imagine what we could accomplish if we would allow God to lead the way. We don't have to imagine, it's happened a lot. Throughout history, there are countless examples of this kind of collaboration, big and small, famous and obscure. And while a self-promoting project like the Tower of Babel serves as a cautionary tale for us to be mindful of, there are many more that promote the majesty of God, His creativity, and His glory. Will Thomas has been investing in organizations that demonstrate social and spiritual impact since 2013. Prior to his private equity experience, Will served as an evaluator pilot in his numerous leadership positions in the United States Air Force, achieving the rank of major. He shares more about the power we find when seeking collaborative community. I don't want to make you blush on camera, but when I think about people who are really intentional and are really champions of investing locally in community, I think about what you guys have done here in Dallas with Ambassadors Impact Network. So tell us about how it started and what Ambassadors is all about.
Yeah, one of the ways that God helped us found Ambassadors Impact Network is when I was speaking on a panel and I got a question from an investor that got me thinking. And she asked, how do I find these direct deals where I can be inspired by the entrepreneurs and connect with them and invest more than capital? And my best answer, which is a great answer, was a fund, like Sovereigns or others are doing this work. But to be directly connected, it takes some time, a network. And as we started thinking about it, this network took shape, and that was Ambassadors Impact Network, that really provides a service to entrepreneurs and to the investors that want to invest in those companies that are very faith-driven.
Cool. So give us an idea of the size and the scale and the scope of what you all do.
So we have 38 members right now.
Yeah.
We've invested over the past 2 years. We were founded a couple of years ago. We've invested $6.5 million across 16 companies.
Yeah.
And the way we're structured, it's a 501c6 nonprofit organization that's a business association. Education is part of our mission, but also is part of our mission is to find those deals that fit our mandate, make sure we have good diligence where members are sharing diligence, and then individual members or family offices invest in those deals at the end of our process. And then we have a follow-up where we stay in touch with those entrepreneurs. Our members serve as directors or advisors to the company or just liaisons to the company, so we can pray for them and encourage them.
So that's awesome, and I love the way you do it in community. So you're getting together relationally, there's a lot of sharing of best practices, there's a fellowship component to it. And so geographically, is it just Dallas? Is it broader than that?
So we started in Dallas with some like-minded families, and over time we got requests from other areas in Texas. And so now we have a couple from Austin, and we have some other interest from Texas-wide. And we invest nationally, and we have some international investments.
Got it.
As well.
So I love that community aspect. When I invest with others, and you and I have invested together on deals, just the opportunity of calling somebody up and say, what are you thinking about this deal, and how are you processing it? And gosh, let's process together that quarterly report that just came back, and how do we love on this entrepreneur? How do we pray for them? Sounds like their vice president of HR left or their CFO left. Let's figure out who in our networks we know it can plug in. But there's something about geographic proximity that makes it super special. And I imagine there's some benefit there in terms of local deal flow, but in terms of just enjoying the space and just enjoying the process that might be different and better than investing in a fund.
Yeah, the mutual encouragement we have with one another, we meet on about a quarterly basis, and it's such a joy to meet with other entrepreneurs, men and women who are focused on this themselves, but also investing. So many of our investors are entrepreneurs or are in the private equity community.
Super cool. Okay, another thing that I think you've done really well is, in addition to that geographic focus in the community, is pouring into the next generation of investors. Tell us about that.
So we have a young professional membership style, and they're still paying members who join the network, and they invest their time. They're not accredited investors, but these are generally pre-MBA or post-MBA men and women that want to allocate time to helping with our diligence process, and we have a very standardized diligence process. We also have our accredited members meet with them and talk about faith in the workplace, their experience in their professional endeavors, and really want to pour in and invest in these young professionals.
Okay, cool. So I know enough about you and have known you long enough to know that you've been an investor for a very long time, and you invested by yourself and with just a couple of others. Why? Tell us a little bit about getting this started, and then maybe about where you see this as maybe even being better than what you'd done before. I'd imagine it takes longer to get consensus on some of these deals, so there might be some things that are slower than what you had done as an individual investor. But just talk to us about the benefits you see of being in community.
Yeah, there's three that come to mind. I mean, the first one you hit on is when you're working with others, yes, it takes longer, but you come out with a better result. And so one of the errors that we can fall into in faith-driven investing is reaching for return and leaving the spiritual impact behind.
Yeah.
The other error, if you will, is to invest in a company that has great spiritual impact, but actually is better off being a charity. So it's more of a donation. Another thing on accountability is when I serve others, I do better, I think better. And so I love serving our members and I love serving the entrepreneurs. And then finally, there's latent capital, and investors want to put money in these deals, but they don't have the time. And so creating infrastructures where investors can put money in the deal and educate them on that is a real blessing to the community. Yeah.
So talk to us back to that first part about investors reaching for return but not being able to understand the spiritual impact and how to integrate that. You guys are very well thought, you've thought about that a lot. How do you do that, and then can you measure it?
The way we think about it is we think about investing with an eye to things we can see and we can measure. And so we look at the values in the company and we think about what values are documented in the company and whether they're biblically aligned. It could be mission statements, it could be employee handbooks. Yeah. The second thing we look at is whether the activities in the company are advancing the gospel. It could be a demonstration of the gospel, or it could be a proclamation. It could be prayer, service time, paid time off, chaplaincy. And then finally, we look at the company's service or product. And we want to know whether that is advancing the gospel in some way. Yeah. Not all three are true all the time, but that gives us something we can look at. The last thing I'll say on that is the follow-up. On a quarterly basis, we ask them to provide not only their financials, but also what they're doing in terms of advancing the gospel and what the Lord's doing in their business. And we've just started asking them about their spiritual impact practices. Yeah. We're aggregating those and we're going to share those back to the investors and the entrepreneurs so that they can learn from one another.
Tell us, so 16 different investments, and you talked about this framework. Maybe give us a story, just a couple, just to give us a sense about what the stories are behind these companies.
So Callie & Wax is a great example. Yeah. Candle company in Texas, and I was walking through the farmer's market and I met Jacob, the founder. And as I talked to him, I noticed that he had 5% of his revenue, non-income, going to fight trafficking. Mm-hmm. And I asked him why that was, and he gave a reason for the hope he had, and it was Jesus Christ. And so as I started talking to him, I realized this is the kind of entrepreneur that we want to invest in. So we invested in his company. In that case, we took the whole round, and 2 of our members are now on the board of the company, and we were able to source a 3rd board member. And so we now really are invested in this company, not only with our money, but our time. And Jacob is such a blessing to us, and he's really inspired a lot of us. So that's one account. And then we look at also their internal practices and their plans also to hire traffic victims as well.
Okay. What's the size of their ministry and their organization?
So their organization it's small. So they just moved into a facility that's permanent. Yeah. And they do sell to Whole Foods and some other retailers, and then they sell online as well.
Okay, so it's beyond just an individual farmer's market. They've achieved some level of scale.
Yes, definitely. They have a number of retail customers.
And you invest domestically, but then also overseas. Do you have a story you can share overseas?
Overseas, we always want to have a partner that we know and trust who's either on the board or also invested and well invested. So
I love that, by the way. That's a topic that we don't talk about enough, which is the concept of local capital, local skin in the game. Right. And if there's, aside from divine providence, the results that we've had in Sovereign's Capital that have been good, and we've been in some great stories, have been because we have this local capital partner in. And so many people that are watching this today are going to want to be drawn into overseas stories, but doing it with a local partner is so important.
Yes, yes. So it's not our focus. We do invest via funds that are international, but we also will invest directly in companies. And so we have a number of them. Actually, we haven't gotten permission to share anything but Italian wax, but we do invest internationally.
Got it, good. Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us today. And so if somebody's listening to this or watching this and they say, that's awesome, I want to be helping to start something like this in Seattle or fill in the blanks, how do they get started?
Yeah, I think a core group. I mean, it really, there's a like-mindedness that needs to exist with a core group of individuals around how focused you want to be on certain areas. I think one of the challenges in impact is we all have various interests that might not totally mesh. And so getting that group, and then two, seeing if there are others in the area that have that similar passion.
Can they contact you? Will
Yes,
you help them out?
Definitely.
All right.
AmbassadorsImpact.com.
So hard to say no to that, right?
No. Well, I love it. And I think your heart and my heart is to advance the gospel through businesses. And you're building an ecosystem, and I'm just part of that ecosystem, and it's a huge blessing.
Well, thank you very much for being here. It's awesome having you as a partner in the movement, and you're a great inspiration. It makes me almost wish that I lived in Texas so I could join your group. Corinthians 12 talks about how each of us in the body of Christ has a different role. Effective deployment of capital is done best when working alongside others with complementary skills and experiences, contemporaries, mentors, trusted allies. These are the people God calls us to partner with in order to make a real difference, not in a purely transactional way, but by investing in meaningful relationships that help draw out the very best of us in each decision we make. It's not impossible to make investment decisions alone, but when the considerations are not just along the lines of financial return, but also under the weight of making a spiritual and social impact, it helps to have allies. More often than not, it brings about our best. We can all look back at our greatest mistakes and wish we had more counsel. A community that can keep us from making that bad church parking lot deal in the moment. Who are you connecting with in your community, in your peer group, as mentors and friends? Are you participating in a faith-driven investor group? Your best chance for success is dependent on your ability to collaborate with other people, finding those who share the same passion, think the same way about faith-driven investing, and share similar goals is critical to success that goes beyond the bottom line. Spend some time in your group talking about this session and how it relates to the journey you're on. Open yourselves up to learning from one another. Be honest with each other. What you get out of this time together will only be as enriching and life-giving as what you put into it.
Faith-Driven Investor is a discipleship ministry from Faith-Driven Movements, a non-profit corporation whose mission is to inspire and mobilize people to use their time, talent, and resources to impact the world around them. The materials are for informational purposes only. All investing carries risk, so be sure to consult an advisor before making any investment decisions. Hosts and guests may maintain positions in the companies and securities discussed. For all other questions, please visit faithdriveninvestor.org.